Hello and welcome to the Cedar Falls Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for April 14th, 2021. We have a variety of means for you to join the meeting tonight. We have a few more in-person guests, which is good to see. You can also join by Channel 15, Zoom link, and by phone, and all those are on the website for instructions. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order, and roll call by Karen.
Okay, good evening. Hartley?
Here.
Holst?
Here.
Larson?
Here.
Leeper?
Here.
Lynch?
Here.
Prideaux?
Here.
Saul?
Here.
Schrod?
Here.
Sears?
Here.
All present.
Full house tonight, that's good. All right, so I would entertain a motion to approve. We have two sets of meeting minutes to approve tonight. You can, a motion for one or both, the March 24th meeting and the special meeting of February 10th.
I'll make a motion to approve both.
Second.
I would second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
same sign? All right, minutes pass. At this time, we'd open up to public comments. And this is for items that are not on the agenda tonight. Is there anyone that would like to speak to an item not on the agenda? Seeing none. We will transfer, is there anyone online?
No one online.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to old business, and our first item is the Central Business District Overlay Site Plan Review, and that item is actually being deferred to a future meeting, so we need a motion to defer.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign?
Aye.
All right, we'll defer that to a future meeting. The second item of old business is the land use map amendment and rezoning for M1 to Highway 1 for a medical office use. And this item has been withdrawn from our agenda, so there's no action on that one. The next item on old business is rezoning from A1 Agricultural District and R1 Residential to a mixed use for the Pinnacle Prairie Master Plan. And Karen, I believe we're going to discuss this tonight and continue to a public hearing to the next meeting. So if you could introduce that item, that'd be great.
Great. I've shared my screen for the people on Zoom. Just an item here, a location map to show where this is located. It's at along Cedar Heights Drive. This is a rezoning request. Part of the property is zoned agriculture and part of it's zoned R1, and this is the location just north of Huntington Road. This is a proposed rezoning for these parcels. It's approximately 12 acres, would be from A1 to mixed use, and 3 acres from R1 to mixed use. The proposal does incorporate this new land then into the larger Pinnacle Prairie mixed use district and updates the master plan accordingly. I'm not going to go, since you've heard this item a number of times, I'm not going to go through the details of this other than to note that we have a master plan already for this area. It was updated in 2015, so we're looking for an update now again and to incorporate this new area into this master planned area. That is the request. As you recall, previously, they had a previous proposal to you last year, and that proposal was denied due to the concept plan didn't show an east-west connection across this entire development, and so it was denied for that reason. So they've come back with a different proposal, and here you can see this on the screen, the Pinnacle Prairie East concept plan. It does have a variety of uses proposed, like the rest of Pinnacle Prairie, and they do propose to continue to use their current Pinnacle Prairie general design guidelines. Some notable things here, the townhomes focus on alley-loaded types, and the neighborhood commercial, you can see now with the Prairie View Road extending across the district that's now well connected. People living in the area can easily get to that neighborhood commercial area in the future and connects well to the trails. Focusing in on the multifamily development area, which is the land that's proposed for rezoning, they're showing approximately 12 units per acre. That, of course, would would have to be, refined when they bring in an actual site plan, when they are planning to develop it. The buildings then, you can see here in their concept, are oriented toward the street with parking located kind of behind, under, to the sides of the building, and there's a lot of landscaping proposed here, so kind of a nice site plan. And it has good access to the open space and the neighborhood trails. The focus of the effort here is then the change to that street network and traffic circulation from the previous proposed. It now shows a really well-connected street pattern. Prairie View Road does connect over to Cedar Heights Drive at the Huntington Road intersection. If the commercial area cannot be developed due to the floodplain issues that we talked about at your last meeting, the applicant has agreed to do an alternate route for Prairie View Road that would go along the southern portion of the multifamily area. So we'll work out those details and put that into the development agreement. There's just a few technical comments. Once again, just a reminder that a preliminary and final plat will be required prior to any land sales in this area within the master planned area. And of course, a new developmental procedures agreement or an amended one, we have one now with the applicant, will need to be drafted and signed prior to setting that public hearing at City Council. So with that, the Community Development Department recommends approval of the request to rezone property from A1 Ag District to R1 and R1 Residential Zoning District to Mixed Use Residential Zoning District, and to update the Pinnacle Prairie Master Plan accordingly, subject to a new or amended development agreement that addresses the specific issues outlined in the staff report. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right. Is anyone from the applicant like to speak to this item? Nobody online?
I think we should have.
We do. Carrie Hansen? Is that who you were thinking, Carrie?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Carrie, would you like to speak to this item?
Sorry, I just unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes, just real briefly. Good evening. My name is Carrie Hansen with Shafi Design Associates. We're a consultant for the petitioner this evening. Karen has very adequately addressed the major changes that have occurred since we last appeared before you in October. First and foremost, the connection of Prairie View out to Cedar Heights at the location of Huntington, where the new roundabout is to go in. And again, as she stated, if this location for some reason is not possible due to floodplain considerations, we have agreed to relocate that to the southern portion of the proposed multifamily area. Our requested rezoning this evening to MU does reflect the land use amendments that were previously recommended for approval by this commission, also back in October of 2020. We have additionally met our obligations for the Goldenrod and Prairie Parkway roundabout improvements that had been previously noted in staff's report, and continue to work with the city on those particular items. We did submit a revised development procedures agreement back in January of this year that does address many of the items noted in staff's report, and we will continue to work with staff to resolve any of those outstanding issues that we have and finalize the document before we proceed to the City Council if we're fortunate to have a recommendation for approval here this evening. So as not to belabor, I know you have an agenda tonight, we are respectfully requesting that you approve our rezoning request this evening. Happy to answer any questions. We do have Eric Johnson there in person with you this evening, as well as myself and Mike Shafi to answer any questions you might have.
Does anyone have questions for the applicant from the commission? Okay, thank you. With that, anyone from the public that would like to speak to this item? Hearing none, I would bring it back to the commission for discussion on a potential motion. it appropriate to think about approval tonight, Karen?
Yes,
Yeah, I really think they've done a really nice job of addressing all the concerns we had earlier on the project, and it looks really great. So I would make a motion to approve the rezoning request.
Second.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, Karen?
Hartley,
Aye.
Holst,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Leeper,
Aye.
Lynch,
Aye.
Prideaux,
Aye.
Saul,
Aye.
Schrod,
Aye.
Sears.
Aye.
All voting aye.
All right, that moves on to council. Our last item of old business is related to the zoning code text amendments, and I would entertain a motion to move that to the end of our agenda.
So moved. Second.
All right, we will move that to the end. Remind me to get back to that. New business, we have a central business district overlay design review for wheat pasting murals, and I believe JD is going to introduce the item.
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Karen, if you don't mind sharing my screen.
Yes, I've got it up on Zoom. You should be able to see it. Do you see it, JD?
Not me, but
I'm showing it up in Zoom. Julie, sir. Do I need to stop sharing and share again? Yeah. Okay.
We're all about done with this, right?
Trying to find something. There we go.
All right, JD, you're live.
yep. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'll just run quickly with the first business of tonight. I think it's the Central Business District, the design review for temporary wheat pasting murals. So we have, if you go to the previous slide, we have a map of 14 different locations being presented by the applicant, and there are a number of locations are noted on the left. The idea is to have the wheat pasted murals on this locations. In the next slide, I will just run through the basics of this project. This project is to explore how memories of our shared past can help us discover what getting back together in a post-COVID might look like. This mural will be all based on cultural memory, family snapshots, and ephemeral street arts. All these murals will be made of biodegradable, non-destructive art form called wheat pasting. Installation do not permanently alter the facade of the building, but can be removed by power washing. And all murals will be sourced from historic photographs from Forte Pan, Iowa Photo Archive, and the installations will be taking place between April 20th and May 10th, once the council approves it. I would like to run down some of the images that were proposed one by one.
So JD, do you want me to just run kind of through the slides here?
Yes, please.
Yeah, these are
Thank
the
you.
various images, and I'm sure the applicant can also address any questions you have, but there's some really nice images of here of what might be possible to wheat paste on some of the buildings downtown.
The last slide was more about the series of images that the applicant had. They might choose front and back, but these are the total number of images. There are 26 images in total we have seen so far. And in the next slide, the proposed facade plan meets the Central Business District and zoning ordinance requirements. And the staff believes that this would be a great community building effort to celebrate UNI graduating student Isaac Campbell's master's thesis work. Also, just so everybody knows, Isaac is also has been working with Committee Main Street to schedule like a walk-in tour, which might be possible too. And overall, this project is going to enhance the downtown businesses as well. So Community Development Department recommends approval of the temporary wheat pasting mural at multiple locations in downtown Cedar Falls. If this is approved tonight by the commission, this will go to next council meeting. I'm available for any questions, and I believe Isaac is present as well for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, JD. Is there anyone from the applicant that would like to speak to the item? You don't have to. That'd be great. If you give your name and address, that'd be great.
Yeah, so my name's Isaac Campbell. My address is 2009 University Drive, apartment G4 here in Cedar Falls. And I'm a master's student just a couple weeks away from graduating. So I'm really excited. And this is the main component of my master's thesis, which is talking about cultural memory, which is a special part of communication studies where we learn about what constitutes memory, how we remember things, how our shared pasts are created or changed through memories. And then the thesis is actually looking at family snapshots, particularly as a way of remembering, and what happens when we put those family snapshots up in a public place as ephemeral street art. So there's a bit of a way to explore the ephemerality of memory in itself, in the way that sometimes over time we forget things. And so there's a really nice parallel between putting up this art that's not going to last forever, and it's going to come down, and sort of connecting that with these people that are in the photos, or hopefully inspiring conversation amongst the people that are coming to witness the photos or the murals, or helping to install them. So like JD said, the whole idea of the project is exploring what getting back together means, both visually through the photographs and what they're doing, the people in the photographs are doing, maybe how they feel when they're back together. But also, this is a group effort, getting volunteers, grad students from UNI, but also community members to actually install the pastings. So it's not just going to be me. There's going to be a whole team of people in downtown Cedar Falls putting these up. There's going to be people getting together to come down and see them. And witness them and visit businesses and things like that. And we also hope that through some partnerships with Community Main Street, we can do some kind of event, something to bring even more people downtown to visit the businesses now that we're starting to get ready to open things back up. So it's all about getting back together, which is, I think it's something that we all really need right now, to look forward to. So I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yes, I do. Isaac, I think it's a wonderful idea. In this day and age when we have a lot of cultural memories, I noticed that I think there was only one of those photographs that had any diversity in it, and I wonder if that is something that we should explore for Cedar Falls also.
Yes, and actually there's two. There's a series of images. I believe the family is from Vietnam that we also have. So we've tried to insert some diversity in these for sure. And unfortunately, all these are sourced from Fort Upon, Iowa, which is this collective archive that's based out of UNI that we get donations from. So unfortunately, we just haven't grown enough to really get as much diversity in there that we're looking for. We really want that. And so hopefully, this may inspire families of different backgrounds or different cultures to donate their photographs to help boost the archive. But that is definitely a consideration. So I really want to find good homes for the images of people of color or of different nationalities that we can put up on these walls as part of this mural installation. So great question.
Thank you.
Isaac, I have a question. How long do these wheat paste murals last?
This is the question everybody asks, and it's a great question because we never know.
Okay.
Sometimes they may last. The first one I did lasted for 24 hours, and then a big storm came and just, she was gone the next day. But we've had some on the College Hill, which you can actually still go visit. They're still up. They're on the back of Little Bigs and Octopus. They've survived a UNI winter, which is a testament to itself, I guess, but we've had them up where they've lasted more than a year. So we do expect there will be damage. They are just paper, so we expect people to peel them off maybe sometimes, the rain or the wind, but because we're installing them in large sheets, they're about 3 feet by 25 feet long sheets of paper. Not all the images will be that large, but we're installing single sheets of paper rather than lots of pieces. They're going to withstand a lot more of the weather and conditions than just a bunch of like 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper would. So I'm very confident that they'll last well through the summer and into the fall if the business owners decide to keep them up.
Any other questions for Isaac? Isaac, has there been any consideration, I think this is a great project, about more permanent kind of installations in any way?
Sorry, say that again?
Have there been any discussions about any more permanent kind of installations like this?
You know, that's another question everybody asks because they find out how much they love these. And while I'm not a professional muralist, doing paintings and things like that, I think this is a great stepping stone to help people on the commission or different arts groups say, you know, a mural would look really great on that wall. And so this is a great stepping stone for those conversations in communities. I'm not the right guy to do that. I'm more interested in the pasting and the event and the bringing the people together. I think a lot of the value in this is that you're getting kids and adults and people who wouldn't consider themselves artists to be participating. There's something very liberating about putting something up on a wall that wasn't there before. So I'm more interested in that part, but if that helps the community like Cedar Falls approach discussions, I know a couple of the business owners have actually told me that they were already thinking about having a mural. And so this is a great stepping stone for them in approaching, you know, what could this wall be for me or for my business or my property. So nothing too permanent, but as long as they want to keep it up there, they're welcome to keep it up as long as it stays up.
We certainly appreciate the theme. I think everyone can appreciate the Get Back Together theme and is ready for that. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. And thank you for all of your time serving on the commission as well. So.
Congratulations on the soon-to-be graduation as well.
Thank you.
All right, anyone from the public that would like to speak to the item?
We have somebody in Zoom.
Okay.
Kim Bear.
Kim, I think you're on.
Thanks, Brad. Kim Bear, 3815 Union Road in Cedar Falls, and I just wanted to show Community Main Street support of Isaac's project. We've been working together with reaching out to property owners for this project, and I'm super excited to see what it looks like, to invite people down.
Thank you,
Can
Kim.
you not hear me? Sorry.
Okay, with that, I'll bring it back to the commission.
I think this is a really cool project, and just seeing it on College Hill and how it just brings like art to the buildings and just is a beautification almost to the area. So I'm excited to see this on Main Street. So I would move to approve.
I would second that.
We have a motion and a second. We want to do a roll call vote, Karen?
Hartley,
Aye.
Holst,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Leeper,
Aye.
Lynch,
Aye.
Prideaux,
Aye.
Saul,
Aye.
Schrod,
Aye.
Sears.
Aye.
All right, that item will move on to council. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the College Hill Neighborhood Overlay Review of 704, 706 West 28th Street. And Chris, I believe that you will be introducing the item.
Yep. Good evening, Commissioners. I will try to make this quick, as it is a familiar request here. This request is regarding a remodel of an existing duplex on the southwest corner of 28th and Walnut, and it is in an R2 residence district within the College Hill Neighborhood Overlay. Next, let's see. Just a quick review of the intent and purpose of the overlay and also why this requires special approval. The College Hill Neighborhood Overlay District was established for the preservation of neighborhood character and the stabilization of its neighborhoods after a long history of changes and updates to properties that typically increased occupancies and detracted from the original intent of those properties and neighborhoods. This trend and the establishment of the overlay called for more scrutiny when reviewing changes that may affect the character of the neighborhood. And I should say the overlay defines the adding of bedrooms to a duplex as a substantial improvement, which requires review and approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council. So adding bedrooms was the trigger here, as we've reviewed in the past, which makes sense because while we welcome improvements that benefit residents and neighbors, zoning codes are established to regulate density and intensity of use. So, the proposal is to add bedrooms and other appropriate updates with the intent to raise the rental occupancy of each unit from 2 adults to 3. The previous proposal reviewed here was for 4 bedrooms on each side to raise the rental occupancy from 2 to 4. So this request is not as ambitious as the previous request. Also, given tandem parking, which is allowed on this property, there is enough parking to accommodate 3 persons per unit, and also have some flexibility depending on the situations and people that are living there. Let's look at this against the density of the neighborhood. Most duplexes in this neighborhood have an occupancy of 6 or fewer. Also, the rental code's change of ownership provisions have all properties with occupancies above 6 occupants subject to review and reduction of occupancy at transfer or sale of the property. So, in light of this analysis, occupancy of 6 appears to be in line with the goals and intent of the rental code and seems appropriate. Just getting right into the end of this, due to sufficient parking and consistency with occupancy standards outlined in the rental code, staff recommends approval to add 1 bedroom to each unit, subject to the condition that the occupancy limit be fixed at 3 persons aged 18 years or older per unit, which is 1 adult per bedroom. Before we move on to discussion, I did want to mention that I did receive some public feedback. 2 persons in the neighborhood were not in favor of the density increase, but another also did not think that the applicant should be limited as long as he adheres to applicable codes. So I just wanted to make sure that that was communicated and is on the record.
All right, thank you, Chris. With that, is there anyone from the applicant that would like to speak to this item? You can state your name and address.
Wes Geisler, 5373 South Hudson Road, Cedar Falls. I mean, Chris pretty much covered it all. I think most of you have heard the proposal before, but now it's down to 3, sufficient parking, the lot, and obviously the increase in interior square footage is sufficient for the 3 proposed, as well as the proposed siding and exterior upgrades. I think will add value to the neighborhood. As well as the driveway that was approved through City Council with required landscaping, so the landscaping will be replaced. And I think it was add a nice asset to the neighborhood once it's all finished and looks modernized almost on the exterior. I'll take any questions if you guys have any.
Any questions of the applicant?
Yeah, I like what you've done. I think it's a great improvement over what you first came to the P&Z with. And I mean, I think it's a great idea. And I don't think it changes any of our rules as far as the College Hill requirements. So I'm all in favor of it.
Okay. Thank you, Wes.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak to the item?
Nothing in Zoom.
Okay. With that, I bring it back to the commission.
Yeah, I agree that I think it's a nice compromise over what was the initial proposal. I think it kind of meets in between for some of the neighborhood concerns and as well, but still gives them the chance to improve the property. So I would make a motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All right. Leanne had a second. Karen, roll call vote.
Hartley,
Aye.
Holst,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Leeper,
Aye.
Lynch,
Aye.
Prideaux,
Aye.
Saul, Schrod,
Aye.
Sears.
Aye.
All right, that item moves on to council again. Our next item is a minor subdivision plat for Lot 2 of Blaine's Corner 2nd Edition. And JD, I think we're back to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that would be me. The second case for tonight, the third case for tonight is the minor subdivision plat for lot 1 of Blaine's Corner, second edition, located at 219 Brandon Boulevard, as highlighted on the map with the star. In the next slide, I will just run down what we are doing here, what the applicant intends to do. So applicant intends to divide the parcel lot 2 of existing subdivision into 2 parts, into parcel V and parcel W. Parcel V would be about 16.5 acres, which will be occupied by existing Blaine Street and Farm stores, and parcel W is the one where the new Aldi store is being proposed. It's about 4.41 acres, the area. The proposed setback for the building is 10 feet internal setback, which is not usually required, but applicant intends to have that 10 feet just to break the 2 buildings. And the peripheral 20 feet setback around the perimeter of district is also shown on this. In the next slide, I would run by you some of the easements. There is an existing 10 feet utility easement along the south and the east property line. And there are 2 other easements proposed on this plat. One is the proposed access easement, which is on the highlighted in blue, which is in the south east corner. That would allow an access to parcel W, which would be the Aldi store, and then there is a public sidewalk easement that will allow extension of 5 feet sidewalk from the existing 10 feet wide Cedar Prairie trail, as highlighted in the green. So those are the couple of 2 easements that has been proposed on the plat. There are some technical comments on this minor plat, some of the changes that the city staff is recommending. And some of the legal papers to be turned in are still pending. We expect those issues will be resolved by the applicant soon. In the next slide, this minor plat is just for introduction and discussion purpose and public comment only at this point of time. Community Development Department has reviewed the minor plat and recommends approval with the following stipulations. Any comments or directions specified by Planning and Zoning Commission and conformance to all city staff recommendation and technical requirements. We have applicant NDR Rand, Ryan Anderson, and Alex Amadio online, and all they will be open for any questions that the commission has, and even I will be available for any question that the commission has. Thank you.
Thank you, JD. Does the applicant have any comments to make, or just here for questions? If you do, raise your hand.
Ryan Anderson?
Ryan, I think you're on.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I must not have video access. Nothing much to add. Thank you, JD, for the presentation. We've been working with staff for a few months now on this project. I should introduce myself. I'm Ryan Anderson with ISG, civil engineer and project manager for this project. All of these been looking for another site here in Cedar Falls for a while. I'm glad to see this one is moving forwards. And I think it'll be a nice project in partnership with Blaine's. And I just want to make a brief introduction, and I can sit back quietly and answer any questions that may come up.
Thank you, Ryan. Does anyone have questions for the applicant? Seeing none online. Anyone from the public that would like to speak to the item? All right, we'll bring it back to the commission for comment. This item is for review and direction and continue on to the next meeting.
If there aren't any concerns or objection, is there any reason we wouldn't move to approve it?
So there's some technical issues that we want to work out with the applicant before their next meeting. So I think everything will be resolved by then, but we do have a few things we need to work through with them.
Okay.
It looked like it's fairly straightforward, and I wouldn't have any comments on any questions or concerns, you know, so I would think that it would be readily approved, would be my opinion.
All right. If there's no other comments, we'll move that on to the next meeting. All right, the next item is the Highway 1 site plan for the Aldis. And JD, I think you're going to keep going.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, okay, if I have the share screen. Yep, thank you. Yes, the next item is the site plan for Aldis. It's the same location as we discussed in the minor plat. Just to brief everybody, this was the original plat in '98, as you can see on the screen. The current property is in Highway 1, Highway Commercial Zoning District, and the proposal is to develop about 20,000 square feet of Aldi grocery store, which will be created after the approval of minor plat. In the next slide, I will just run down through the basic information on the site plan. So we have a 20 feet setback for landscaping as highlighted on by green color on the top and the west lot line. We have a 10 feet internal building setback highlighted in red, and there are some arrows shown in and out of the building. So this building is going to have access point from south mainly for public, and it will also have access on east and north for accessing the site by employees. Want to also note the location of the trash, which is in the north area of the building, which will be hidden from anywhere on the street. So moving on, in the next slide, I would run down the parking requirements for about 92 stalls as per the zoning code. The proposed parking is about 172, which exceeds what we require here, and that also includes 6 ADA stalls, which will be placed next to the building for easier accessibility. And about the open space requirement, about 10% of the site area is supposed to have open space or green space required, whereas the proposed is about 34%, which exceeds the limit. In the next slide, I would run by other important component of the site plan is extending the existing 10 feet wide Cedar Prairie Trail with a new 5 feet wide public sidewalk as highlighted in yellow. So that will be part of the development as well as required by the code. In the next slide, I would run down with a landscaping plan. The site landscaping, as you might know, there is no landscaping right now on site. The applicant has proposed great plantation, green buffer zones from adjacent property, and also brought green cover throughout the parking lot. This landscaping includes peripheral landscaping, internal landscaping, and parking lot trees. As per code, the required points to be met are 3,940, and the proposed landscaping points are 4,020. City staff appreciates the work done by applicant in enhancing the area. So the landscaping is done pretty well on the site. In the next slide, I'll run down to the basic stormwater management area, which will be in the northeast section of the building as highlighted in blue. And the other services are highlighted by color. I believe the detailed site plan were included as part of the packet. And in the next slide, another important thing I want to address is the signage. So applicant is proposing 2 pylon signs as highlighted on the map to the right by yellow. Those are the 2 locations. Pylon sign B, which is going to be placed along Highway 58 that will be placed by removal of existing blames, freestanding sign or pylon sign. They want to place Aldi and Blaine's Farm Fleet sign on there and a new Aldi sign on the top yellow circle, which will be the new Blaine's lot. New Aldi's lot. So those are the two pylon signs proposed. Both the sign meets the ordinance. Staff wants to just note that parcel W, which is the Blaine sign, Blaine site, the sign meets the maximum code requirement. So if they were to have any future tenants or any other signage, that will have to go through PNC Council for approval. And in the next slide, I would run down through other bigger component of this Highway 1 site plan review is the design review, which usually considers proportion, roof, shape, pitch, patterns, materials and texture, color and architectural features resembling the surroundings. In all, I think details has been specified in the staff report. In all, I would say this building is almost similar to a traditional big box store design. It resembles surrounding buildings. There is more of the building is going to be flat roof, except for the entrance where the canopy is extended. And then other thing to note is there are also two wall signs proposed, one on the south and one on the east wall of the building, which also meets the sign code. More of the material palette is brick, and then complement material has been used with lighter tones as well. So overall, it's a great looking building as per the code. In the next slide, I would just run by a few technical things. There are some technical minor corrections or things pending from the applicant. We believe that those technical issues will be addressed prior to the next PNC meeting. And in the next slide, I would just run like this presentation was just to introduce the site plan and be up for discussion and public comments tonight. City staff suggests that minor adjustment be made prior to the next meeting, and the community development department approves the recommended site plan, the submitted site plan as per the following conditions. The developer must address all the comments and directions specified by Planning and Zoning Commission, and the developer must conform to all city recommendations and technical requirements. I will be available to answer questions for this project, and the applicant ISG is also online. Andrea Rand, Ryan Anderson, and Alex Amadio for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, JD. If there's anyone from the applicant who would like to add anything to that, raise your hand on the Zoom call.
I'm not seeing any.
All right. Seeing none, anyone from the public that would like to speak to this item? With that, we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion. This again is for a comment and provide direction to staff for consideration at the next meeting.
JD, does the retention area, the green area, does it meet the requirements for the square footage of the parking lot and the square footage for the roof of the building?
Yes, that is correct. I think we have provided technical comments in the staff report, but as of city engineers, I think it would meet the proposed building as well as the parking area.
Any other comments? Seems pretty straightforward, as Marty said in the last review. So with that, we'll move it to the next meeting for approval.
I was just curious what the technical details that had yet to be ironed out were. As a staff question, I guess.
JD, could you address technical issues that still need to be resolved?
JD, did you hear the question?
Sorry, I couldn't hear. Can you repeat?
Are there
Yes.
any technical issues that still need to be resolved? Could you summarize those if there are?
Oh, regarding the site plan?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I think the minor corrections are in the case of there are the trash enclosure details are pending on the site plan, and there are some comments from CFU regarding the updating label for water main, and some general comments by city engineering staff that will have to be reflected on the site plan. So those were the minor things. And the other thing was before the site plan cannot be approved prior approval of minor plat because this is based on it. So we'll take it through the next meeting.
Thank you, JD. Any other questions? All right, we'll move that along to the next meeting then. And our last moved item is the zoning code text amendments for the downtown character district. Karen, are you going to be presenting this one?
Yeah, I will handle this one. So I don't have a presentation for this. I know the commission has been working hard for the last month and a half or so to review the downtown code. We've had it available for public review for that whole period of time, and we have received a number of emails and phone inquiries. People were notified by letter, all the property owners that own property in the study area, the area where the new code would be in place. So we have fielded a lot of questions, mostly questions and not a lot of requests for changes, but we did then highlight any requests that we did receive for changes to the code in that decision matrix that was forwarded in your packet. And so I would just suggest that I think a few people are here tonight to speak on this issue, and we would continue to take that public input tonight, and we will add anything else that we need to the matrix for your decision making. But then we do have some items on the matrix right now that maybe you could give us some direction. So after public comment, maybe we can go back to the commission and you can give some direction on. I've put it up on some slides up at the decision matrix on the PowerPoint so we can kind of run down them one by one, and you can give us some direction on those particular items. So that's all I have for now, and we can talk about those items later.
Thank you, Karen. I assume we don't have anyone from Madden's office to...
No, I think we'll just reserve their time, and if there's other issues after this meeting that they need to zoom in for the next meeting, we'd anticipated that there'd be several meetings where you'd want to have a public hearing for a couple meetings to get everything squared away.
Right. Yeah, we certainly want to give everyone an opportunity to review and make comments. So with that, we'll open up to the public for comments. Anyone in the room first?
I'm not sure if on channel 15 if the sound is off, but for those on Zoom, the sound is really off.
We got to be sure that we're really close to the mic. Is that what you're saying, Leslie?
It's crackling and going in and out.
Okay. I might suggest that you shut your camera off. That might help.
Sounds good.
Is there anyone online? Oh, do you have public comment? Yeah, please. Name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Jessie Chrisman. I reside at 1003 Main Street. I'm just looking for some more clarification on how our properties will be specifically impacted, the flow of traffic. I'm kind of representing several neighbors who live on the Main Street area, who have small children, so we're just concerned about, the sequence of the construction and how that's going to divert traffic. Just heard that Washington Street might turn into a two-way street, how that'll impact, our young children's safety in the neighborhood. There are a lot of young kids in our neighborhood, and we would just, want to make sure that everything stays nice for them. And also, we've lived in our house for nearly a year, and we're really looking forward to some landscaping and fencing projects. but we're hesitant to do anything until we know for sure if our front yard will be impacted at all. So yeah, just looking for some clarification. I don't know if it's more of a comment, but concerns about too what that means if our property is rezoned from residential to commercial, or just if that changes taxes or anything. So just to get some more information.
Okay. Good questions, Jesse.
Thank you.
The road projects are really not part of this discussion at this time, Jesse, just so you know. Those are considerations that are ongoing, but not really part of this, what we're looking at tonight, but this certainly will have an impact. But Karen, could you review any other items that come to mind?
So I would just say that you said you're about 10th and Main Street. So that would be in the zoning code change. All the areas that are under review right now currently either have multifamily zoning on them already or commercial zoning. So I think a lot of people don't know what their current zoning is. I don't know why some people would want to know what their zoning is, but I think that's maybe a little bit of a misunderstanding too, is all these are zoned for higher density right now. So what we looked at is what came out of the downtown vision plan, and a lot of that was to try to keep the residential areas, kind of keep that residential character. So with the zoning changes, it's trying to acknowledge that residential character in the areas that are currently residential, but then allowing some new opportunities, but within the scale and size of the buildings that are currently there. So in that particular area along Main Street, it would be urban general, I believe, and so it would allow a mix of uses like it is today, but it would also keep existing single-family buildings conforming. So that is one added benefit to the new zoning as well. So hopefully that gives you some idea of what would be allowed.
Thank you, Karen. Other public comments? Please come up to the mic. Just could state your name and address.
I'm Melissa Sander. I'm actually from Fairbank, but I'm speaking on behalf of my mother, Joyce Anderson, at 1117 Main Street. Probably the same that you just got done speaking. She's really concerned about the traffic going down from 12th, especially with the high school still, a block and a half away for lines. She has been told some information, is there a boulevard that's going to be there? Is there going to be a roundabout? So she's concerned about the drive that's in front of her house because that's parking. She's also concerned about her sidewalk. She's been there since 1972, and the sidewalk is original from when she was there. So she fought really hard to keep her sidewalk. She wanted me to bring pictures. I have pictures on my phone. But so anyway, she's really concerned about, will she lose that parking space that's in the front? Her neighbor across the street also has parking in the front of their house as well. And then she is concerned about, will part of her land then be engulfed by, if this is a boulevard, that's going to need to widen the street or all of that. So, same probably that you had just mentioned, but she sent me.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. I think I have heard also some misconceptions about the road project that has been discussed that is really not part of this kind of rezoning. It's a good question, and again, those things are being discussed. However, they're really not part of what we're looking at as part of this. The intent of this is to make these areas more walkable for people and improve the scale of the Main Street and the surrounding areas. So we will get to that probably at some point, but probably not through this commission. So thank you. Name and address, please.
Jim Benda, 315 West 2nd Street, Cedar Falls. I guess I'm here, Stephanie invited me to say a few words. Is it possible to get the First Street portion that's being reconsidered put up on the screen so we can talk about specific blocks?
I can see what I can do here. I don't have that readily available, but if you want to continue with your comments,
Sure,
and then I
sure.
will see what I can do.
Jim, you're referencing between, on First Street, between Hudson and Main?
It would be between Hudson and Main, but specifically, I think McDonald's is on Iowa Street, and then back towards Franklin Street.
So, Mr. Benda, did you want the regulating plan, or did you want the GIS map?
Just what's proposed.
Okay. I will,
And so, over the years, probably the last 15 years, I've worked on property specifically on First Street for commercial development. And we often hear that there's a desire for commercial development there, but that the parcels are all too small. And so that hinders growth, because by the time you put parking and a building and water detention or whatever it's required, if you have a drive-through at all, a half a block in this corridor is only 30,000 square feet. So 30,000 is only about 2/3 of an acre. And many of these uses require an acre or more, some 2 acres. So we have a beautiful now First Street corridor that allows for nice smooth traffic. And we don't have many opportunities for commercial development along First Street. And so I would just ask you to reconsider from, I think it's proposed to only go halfway deep back to Second Street. I would suggest that maybe we consider going the full depth of that block, just in those first 5, 6 blocks, whatever it is. McDonald's is already the full block depth, and as you go east of there, I think the First Street properties are all zoned commercially, but the backside is all multifamily. And I guess if you want to encourage commercial development, I think you should reconsider possibly making those bigger. And you might even consider, if you need all those streets, Iowa, I know Tremont you probably have to leave, but whether or not that extra access point on First Street is even needed. I think there's a railroad track there as well. So just, if you want a commercial development in there, I think you need to consider that it might take more square footage than what we're proposing. Yeah, is that the orange portion there commercial?
so these are all mixed-use areas, and so they allow both commercial and residential building forms. And one thing I would note, this is an item in your decision matrix, and the consultants and staff are kind of giving you some pros and cons of this. This is a good that you brought this up, Mr. Benda. You can see here on the regulating plan, to accommodate the larger commercial uses along the frontage of First Street, you can see that on the regulating plan, the yellow area extends for almost 3/4 of the block depth, in acknowledgement that it does take more room for commercial uses. And so it's already been kind of taken into account in the regulating plan. The idea with keeping the frontages along the edge in that neighborhood zoning is to basically acknowledge that uses across the street from each other, if you have houses, there's a lot of houses along here, to have building forms that are similar across the street. So those are a lot shallower there, recognizing that residential uses could be fit in there. The vision plan, I believe, showed townhomes along that edge, and how those could fit in there with tuck-under garages. That might be a building form. But there's some existing houses along there as well that may just continue. So the other thing I would note is that the regulating plan does allow adjustments to that line where it interfaces between 2 different areas. Frontage designation, so you can shift that line if somebody comes in with a project and needs and owns all that property. They can shift it up to 30 feet. So there is some flexibility built into the code to accommodate specific projects within the basics of what we're trying to achieve here. But we can go through that in a little bit more detail when we get to the decision matrix, but it was brought up by a couple people that have property either along Second Street or along First Street.
All right, thank you, Karen. It's a good item for consideration. So any other public comments? We have some online?
We have, Hillary Oberly.
Hillary.
Good evening, Commission. Hillary Oberly, 2508 Franklin Street, Cedar Falls. I just wanted to voice my general support for the overall, the downtown zoning revision. I served as a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission for about 8 years, from 2011 to 2019. And one of the first things that we encountered as I started my tenure on the commission was the adoption of the 2019 City's Comprehensive Plan. And many of you are probably familiar with that. It identifies the strong need for the city to update the zoning ordinance. You know, during my 8 years serving on the commission, we frequently addressed agenda items that reinforce the need for that zoning ordinance update. So I'd first really like to compliment the city, the commission, Community Main Street, and all of those who've been involved in the downtown visioning and the planning work that has occurred over the last 2.5 years. I've taken a close review of the Imagine the Downtown Vision Plan and looked at the draft downtown code and character district, and I'm impressed. Frankly, I think that while no zoning code is perfect, and you are obviously working through many of the details, this is really a step forward. So I applaud the effort on all fronts and encourage a continued work through the details and the amendments, and recommend your approval to the downtown zoning ordinance and map amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. Other public comments tonight?
We do. Kim Bear.
Kim, you're back on.
You can't get rid of me, Brad. Kim Bear from Community Main Street Executive Director. I just want to commend the city as well, to echo Hillary's comments about this whole process. Community Main Street has been a huge part of it, as they have included us and presented this to we have asked our board to go through it, and they have been a part of those meetings as well. So we just look forward to, you know, the new zoning plans are progressive and objective and will unify the vision for Cedar Falls' future. I mean, some of the pictures of what could be in some of these areas are pretty cool and fun to see what could be in those areas, and gives direction to the developers as well, and maybe spurs some new development ideas and activities that could keep Cedar Falls, specifically downtown, marching forward. So we look forward to what this brings to the future of downtown and beyond.
All right, thank you, Kim.
No one else in Zoom.
All right, with that, I'll bring it back to the commission. This is just again for discussion tonight. Karen, are there things that stand out on the matrix? Things that you think really should be changed?
Well, I think it would
highlight?
be helpful to go down and get your direction. So the idea, let me get back to I have some slides with the matrix items on here, and I made a copy for all of you, in case you didn't have your computer with you. So what we were trying to do with this matrix is make sure that we're acknowledging all the comments that we did receive from the public and from the commission. And then there are some things on here that are really technical fixes that both the consultants and the staff noticed a few things as we were reviewing it in more depth that need to probably be adjusted as we go forward. So I'd like to just go down through each one of those and get direction from the commission. So kind of an idea of if you're supportive of going through with that amendment, or you want any more information about something. That way we can come back to you at the next meeting and bring that back and try to address any of your questions. But then at least we know which things to incorporate then into the code as we need to adjust things into the draft. So that would be my request. It would be very helpful to the consultants and staff if we just go down through those items. And I can kind of run through each one, what the request was, and then get your feedback on those. That's it.
Great.
Okay. So number one is really a change to the building form standards. This is in the neighborhood small frontage area placement. to allow the private open area to be above grade for lots with less than 70 feet of depth. So I think this is something the consultants noticed, is that we do, I think in the same area that Mr. Benda just spoke about, there are some shallow lots in various places where the lots are not very deep. And it would accommodate then things like tuck under garages and that sort of thing. But it also provides an opportunity then, there's not much space there for the open space requirement, and it allows it to be then on like above the garage or on the upper floor in balcony or those kinds of things. So on those neighborhood small areas, this would be consistent with what we've done also in the neighborhood medium. So it's really a technical fix that we're recommending that we make to the code.
Any comments on that item?
That sounds good to me.
Yep, seems
Yeah.
to make sense.
Makes sense.
Okay, so the second item then is a change to the regulated building line on the downtown regulating plan on the north side of West 2nd Street from Franklin Street to the western border of the district. The regulating plan should be moved forward an additional 5 feet from 15 to 10 feet off the front property line. This is that same area that we just looked at the regulating plan, and this is the same idea that those lots are not very deep, and the vision plan did show the possibility for townhomes along that edge. This was just to allow that a little bit more space to fit those buildings into those shallow lots.
Did you mean to share your screen, Karen?
Am I not sharing my screen again? I show sharing my screen, but hold on a second. Losing my There we go, sorry. Okay, are we seeing it now on Zoom?
Yes, it looks good.
Okay, I apologize for that. Okay, so once again, this is the same area again that we were just talking about. And so just wanted to get direction from the commission on that item.
Any comments on that item?
I think it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay. And then the third item here on this page, to ensure consistency of terms between the section that's about use-specific standards. You know, we have other sections of the code that we need to adjust, and we're adding that use category section to the code. One thing I would note is the code reference currently is wrong. It says 26-132. Actually, the section number is 26-140, so that's just a technical typo issue. But what we're talking about here is number one, as you know, we went through that function section in the downtown character district, and then we have the use categories. We were adjusting some of the names of those categories, and so now we need to make sure that the character district names in that last function section of the code are adjusted to match so that they're just in sync. So that's what we're talking about here, is making a few of those fixes to that character or the function section of the downtown code to match what you talked about with the use categories.
That will be helpful.
Okay, yeah, it's just a consistency thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then to clarify the language in the character district use table, in that introductory paragraph above the table, we just wanted to make it clear when you're writing code language, when you have a table, sometimes the table just has very limited information, and we've just put X's in that table that shows what uses are allowed, but we wanted to make sure that everybody knew that there are additional standards that apply that they have to. So it's a cross-reference basically in the code that we felt was needed in that section. Is
Okay.
everybody kind of on board with those? So then number 4, I think maybe Ms. Prideaux pointed this out. There's some outlining and formatting that needs to be changed. Some of the numbers got out of sequence, so that's just a typo issue that we need to take care of, but we wanted to recognize it here. I assume everybody's okay with that. Then we did get a request from the Historical Society, and then we also looked at a couple other, the Historical Society mentioned that they felt like they should be noted on the regulating plan as a civic building, which means that acknowledges those iconic buildings downtown, that if they're making changes, that obviously you want to make them consistent with that iconic building. So they basically have some exemptions for some of the form standards in the code if they're noted on the regulating plan as civic buildings. So we also then thought about other things that maybe we had the consultants looked and we reviewed all the areas downtown to make sure we were covering everything and noticed a few other things. So we are recommending to change the Cedar Falls Women's Club and the Historical Society and Victorian House Museum, and also the museum buildings that are in Sturgis Park should then also be noted as civic buildings as well, the little red schoolhouse and the ice house and that sort of thing. So
Makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
all right, and then number 6 here is another technical fix to clarify the categorization of commercial assembly uses as large or small. And this is in that use section that we went through. This was something that's a kind of a legal issue that we need to make sure with some of these commercial assembly uses that they're all categorized similarly. There's been some court cases, so the attorney on the team just noted we probably needed to address that in our use categories. So we would recommend that we make that change. Okay. So number 7, this was originally suggested by Mr. Larson to change the regulating plan designated building frontage on the west side of Overman Park from neighborhood small to urban general 2 to accommodate existing businesses located in the buildings along Franklin Street. We also got some comment from Tom and Dorinda Pounds. They own a house on Franklin Street in that same area, a little further to the south, that they converted the Victorian house, they converted to an office space for their business, and they wanted assurance that their business also could continue, but also they have noted that they have maintained many of the historic residential features of the home, so it could be converted back to residential use in the future if desired. So they really enjoy that, the residential appearance of the building, but then using it for office space. So they would like to have an approach to better accommodate existing businesses while maintaining the residential character and scale of the area. So we thought about these requests, and as it is, any non-conforming use, of course, can continue as long as it's there. And so you could do nothing, and it would be all the existing offices would remain, would be allowed to continue. They could sell them to another property owner. They can continue for as long as they're continued. But with the intent, we're not intending here to limit. We would. Our intent was not to limit the existing office buildings in this area, but rather to prevent kind of new offices from moving into the area. So what we would suggest, the staff would suggest, is adding language, which would be the option number 2 here, to state that all existing businesses at the time of code adoption are considered conforming, so can continue and even can expand. but that no new businesses are permitted in the neighborhood, in these neighborhood frontages. This would be a similar approach to what we took with like Viking Pump, because that's a manufacturing zone right now. So we want to acknowledge that those are ongoing businesses, and we want to allow them to continue and thrive. So that would be our suggestion in this particular location. So this we would apply to all the neighborhood areas, not just this area, but we could apply it more generally. I think there's also an office use that's over on Main Street that I got a call from, and we could also do it over there. I think there's a dental office, as you know, probably, maybe you're aware, along Main Street. It's one of the few buildings that aren't residential there. So I did get a call from that property owner as well. So that would be what we would suggest to change it in general. Any comments or concerns about that direction, or?
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I think so too. It applies just as well if the property is conveyed, just to make that clear.
Right. When you have a conforming use, of course, you can continue that. And even if you have a non-conforming use, you can sell it to a new property owner. It's the use that stays, doesn't matter who owns it.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a nice way to handle that.
So this next one is to include some sort of a design review process / role for the Planning and Zoning Commission. And you expressed some concern that it's difficult to legislate good design, that maybe some additional design guidance may be needed, at least for some projects, and perhaps this should be conducted through a public review process at P&Z and Council. So we put some pros and cons here. We feel pretty strongly about us trying this idea of having everything being administratively reviewed. The pros to doing this does provide some more public scrutiny of development projects in the downtown area, provides additional reassurance then that a project would be consistent with the vision for downtown. Some of the cons on this is one of the goals of the Downtown Zoning Code was to streamline the development process and to move toward a by right approvals for projects that meet that set of, fairly robust standards now that we're putting in the code. So the benefits to this approach are it provides a greater level of predictability for property owners, developers, and for neighbors. And it moves away from the time and expense of negotiating individual projects in the downtown district, particularly if it requires, project redesign or additional legal fees. And then thirdly, it removes the subjectivity of the public review process where individual opinions can cause projects that otherwise meet the standards to be redesigned, adding costs to the project. And then from a fairness and equity standpoint, it can also give sometimes undue influence to, particularly persuasive people or well-connected applicants, or to those who may simply want to prevent development from occurring, to sort of put brakes on development projects. And so that is also a concern when you have everything required for public review. So the purpose of, just another note, is the purpose of establishing the Staff Zoning Review Committee is to ensure that the development projects meet the adopted standards, but also to help assist applicants in their understanding of the intent of the provisions of the code so they can achieve that more cohesive design. So in essence, will serve as sort of an administrative design review process in itself. We're anticipating, that people will need to get used to this new code, and having a committee of people to help understand the code and make sure that all the standards kind of fit together into a cohesive design. So with that, the consultants and staff talked about this quite extensively. We didn't find a real good path forward to trying to insert. It would be quite a bit of change to the code that's drafted to kind of insert something here. So I guess we'd like to just have a little more discussion about that. So we would not recommend adopting a public design review process, at this time.
I'm kind of a fan of the one or the other approach, which it sounds like we're kind of at a segue with. With that said, I'd like to know a little bit more about the staff sort of body that would be doing this architectural review and how that's qualified and how that process works. That's my main question, I guess, or curiosity.
Okay. So right now, the zoning review committee is set up. Of course, the zoning review committee can, of course, call in any experts that we need to call in with regard to engineering and CFU or any of those kind of technical aspects. And all projects would have to go through the technical review committee as well. But with regard to the design of the buildings, so the way the zoning review committee is set up is basically the planning manager, so myself, who have become pretty familiar with this, probably the most familiar of all the staff of what's in the code here. And then the building official, Jamie Castle, right now, the building official, she's the person in charge of the building code and development projects coming through the city for building permits. She is also a trained architect. And then we would pull in at least one of the other planners. That would be, I would designate one of the other planners based on their expertise, what we would need for a particular project to weigh in on things as well. But like I said, it's supposed to be an assistance to developers when they come in so that they have a team of people that can help them get through the process and get to a project that meets all the standards.
Okay.
So I have a question. What if you don't like the project or a planner doesn't like the project?
Well, we don't have the right to, we have to enforce the code as it's written. So the code is written with fairly clear, the idea here was that they're clear and objective standards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we tried to take a lot of that gray area out that we currently have in our code. So if somebody comes through with a project that meets the standards, that it's an administrative review. So while there's a little bit of discretion, particularly there's a little bit of adjustment. So if somebody comes in, we had those in that administrative section, the ability to adjust and tweak things a little bit in case somebody had some construction issues, or if they wanted a little bit of variation, that we would have the power administratively to vary it by, a foot or two here or there. But otherwise, it's pretty clear and objective standards.
So let's say a developer brings a project that maybe the city doesn't want. Are they held to the same, I guess I would hate to see a developer bring in a project and it pretty much conforms, but there's somebody that doesn't want it. It could be at city level, city staff level. Then what would how could that developer go about doing it or getting?
So all standards in the code are appealable to, so if they believe that staff has made an error,
Okay.
and said, oh, I think I meet the standard, and staff has said I don't meet the standard, they can appeal that. The appeal body in the state of Iowa is the Board of Adjustment. So they would go to the Board of Adjustment and say, I think the staff made an error. I think I've met the standards, and then the board would then basically decide
Okay.
whether we've made an error or not.
I just want to know the way, an avenue, if that would happen. I would hope it wouldn't happen, but you never know, so.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I understand the complexity of it because we're trying to make it simpler, right? And we don't want to make it more complex. But it strikes me that what you just described is we really can't do much at all. And that's tough for me to swallow, I think. And I don't know if there's a staff kind of veto power over something that, hey, if you see it, it's not right, that it comes before a commission or something. But I get that it needs to be simple. But I do think that there are those projects that could meet all the requirements and be bad for development of our city. And I guess I it seems like some process is appropriate for staff to say, hey, I gotta raise the red flag on this one.
So allowing, I've heard of such a thing before where there's an allowance for the staff to say, I want to kick this up to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then the Planning and Zoning Commission, basically you substitute your judgment for, you would act as basically the administrators in that sense. I have heard of that, and then it's the staff that would be. Well, the one thing I would say, I mean, we'll take that back if commission wants something like that. We can certainly give you some pros and cons on that, but just off the top of my head, what that does is puts an awful lot of pressure on staff. If somebody doesn't meet the standards or says, well, I just think it's a good project, can't you, kick it to the Planning and Zoning Commission and see what they think? So I think it just introduces that little bit of element of uncertainty for the administrators of the code as well. So, but we certainly can talk about that and bring. Is there any other suggestions or comments on that, or?
Can we even think of a scenario where that would make sense hypothetically? Maybe that's a question for you, Brad.
Where we might not like a project?
Well, where staff would have to, what would, if it's a pass-fail kind of condition, what freedom does staff have to go to usurp that and decide that they don't like something or aren't comfortable making, with that pass-fail, and then that would trigger it to go to the commission or elsewhere?
Yeah, I guess I can't think of a specific one, but I've been on this commission for a while, and we have a lot more requirements right now than we're going to have in some ways. Yeah. And I know that they conflict. Mm-hmm. And I know that there's interpretation in some of it. And I guess for me, there's some means to address that when it comes up.
Are there any particular areas that gives you pause about where you see some of that discretion that might need a little more scrutiny? Have you looked at it to see if there's something that you're concerned about?
Well, I think what Brad's getting at is, right now we do a lot of quote design review, and that kind of goes, excuse me, that kind of goes away. And that's fine if the new code is very objective, and really takes the subjective portion out of it. So it's, like you say, it's an administrative type thing. That's pretty hard to do, though, with design. It's never totally subjective. And so there's a concern that, well, now the review of the commission is now replaced by the review of the staff, and the commission has no say in it, because if there now is some sort of discrepancy between the applicant and the city staff in making a decision on this, then planning and zoning doesn't have anything to do with it. It gets kicked to the Board of Adjustments, right? Mm-hmm. And now they become the plan reviewer and kind of take on the role that planning and zoning took on before. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I see what's happened to the process. So, there's, I don't know, I don't know what it, at the same time, I understand the idea of not wanting to have a whole lot of bureaucratic process to review these, and I'd much rather have it be much more subjective, because design ends up being too subjective sometimes, and I understand that, we want to make it as objective as possible. It's like sometimes we're going to maybe get some not great design just because, you can't objectively measure it, as such, and so you have to allow it. But there is kind of an issue there, because basically, I can see the concern that we're taking the Planning and Zoning Commission totally out of any city design review that's going to happen, which seemed like that was part of what the charge of the commission is, mm-hmm. To begin with. So, just trying to figure out how that gets resolved. But, so I do share some of those concerns about that, how that process is, I don't know. I don't see a clear path either, though, so.
So some of the concerns I understand are they don't developers, this is to give more clarity on what is allowed in these areas, these, what do we call them? Not zoning areas, but.
Character district.
Character districts, and then we have the use in the building standards and all that. I understand that. So is the problem that it takes too long, this whole planning and zoning process takes too long? So why couldn't we change that part of it? You know, once the zoning review committee brings it to the table, we still look at it, but it doesn't have to go through 3 or 4 readings, or, you know what I mean? Why can't that be changed? Or is that something in Iowa code that we can't change? That's all I'm asking.
For an administrative review. So basically, I mean, if you look across a lot of cities, anything that's where somebody's just required to meet set zoning standards. Well, I mean, take the Highway 1 site plan that you've been seeing. You know, staff is kind of checking things off the list. These are the standards, and they've met all the standards. So a lot of times there's not a lot of wiggle room in the standards for the commission to really weigh in on design of things. So the idea is the more objective the standards are in the code, what is it exactly that you would be reviewing? You would basically be reviewing the same thing that we just reviewed and just be saying, yes, it meets the standards. So unless there's something that provides some discretion to judge it one way or the other, if there's not those kind of standards in the code right now, if they're all basically clear and objective, and we're just saying, yes, you know, you meet this standard, I guess that is the question. And Brad and Marty are bringing up that there's still some subjectivity probably inherent in some parts of the design of these buildings. So
I understand we're asking you something that's really difficult. We are, and you're not going to hurt my feelings or anyone else in this commission's in terms of seeing fewer projects come through. I think we're just saying, you know, we want some discretion, right? I mean, if there wasn't discretion in the code, then we wouldn't have this commission. And so it's a little bit idealistic, in my opinion, to think that we can set every rule in place for what's in the best interest of the city. But I understand it's a difficult ask, and it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, and I think a lot of communities don't have their site plans go through a commission and council. A lot of times they are administratively reviewed and approved. And so their planning and zoning commission, city council are more geared toward legislative requests that are requests for rezonings or comp plan amendments, things that are the big picture. Is this a good idea for the community to change these things? Is it compliant with our comprehensive plan? So the focus then for you know, in some cities is to focus on those elements as far as the role of the commission. So it's not unusual to have site plans just be administratively reviewed. So, but I understand that this is a long history of this in Cedar Falls, so it's a big change. So, you know, we understand that.
I have another question. And as I understand it, we're going to be doing this with all of Cedar Falls eventually.
So the idea was originally to update, and we do have a lot of outdated elements in our zoning code in general. Now, I would say that probably they're not all areas of the city are going to be areas that you'd want to have a form-based code applied, but there's certainly the idea is to update things and look more broadly at other areas that we want to update in the zoning ordinance. But those might be, you know, individual tweaks to different zoning districts, or maybe consolidation of some of the zoning districts. But we wouldn't anticipate that we'd be doing form-based zoning. It just tends to lend itself to areas that are more traditional neighborhoods and traditional Main Street commercial areas. So that is the idea, is that we do have quite a few outdated items, and I know the attorney that's on the consultant team is looking more broadly at a lot of those things. That's why we're going to be updating the definition section, and probably a lot of these, there'll be some additional amendments we'll need to make this fit into the code with regard to, you know, making sure it all works together. So we'll continue to work towards some of those things.
One more thing I'd like to share about site plan review that the commission does is you do not do site plan review in every zoning district that we currently have in the city. So C1, C2, M1, M2, and maybe I'm forgetting a couple. Anything that develops in those areas, you don't see those. So some of those, I guess we call them newer zoning districts, although they've been in place probably for about 20 years or so. RP district, the S1 district.
MU.
What's that?
MU.
MU district. That's where we're seeing a lot of our current site plan reviews that are happening. You know, the new Casey's on Green Hill, the new Quick Star on Green Hill, Fairway, all of those are in some of those zoning districts that include those, but the intersection of Waterloo and 18th and Rainbow, none of those have design review. So the Glass Tech building that went in, that didn't go through review. So just some information. It's not a blanket that every zoning district currently is reviewed.
And I think on the flip side, just to build on Stephanie's comment, that some of those older zones, the concern on those zones is that we don't have hardly any standards at all. And so there is a concern about those as well, that we need to update them to come up with some better standards, so that when we do get the site plans in, that we do have something that we're trying to meet a vision or the comp plan for those areas as well. So that would be important as we're updating some of those older zones as well.
Well, I think overall this is a great step forward, and you can't ever make a step forward without some minor compromises here and there. I think overall this is a really good move. As far as the concern about commission oversight, I think Ms. Sheets brought up a really good point. I mean, even into the residential projects, I mean, you could build a really, really ugly house that was the talk of the town that we would have never had any right to see or have our hands on. Part of the aim of this whole ordinance change is to simplify and, in my mind, encourage development in a responsible way. And as far as oversight's concerned, I don't think we can have our cake and eat it too, take a complicated process and make it more complicated with the complexity of this zoning code, and then add another veto layer beyond that. I don't think that's really fair, and I think development would suffer as a result of it. So I think we're at a point where we pretty much need to roll the dice a little bit and let this happen, and trust that it's as objective as it appears to be, and if it encourages development, that's great. And I guess we'll learn the hard way if there are any things that we need to tweak. And I would just encourage staff, as some of those opportunities that we can't yet articulate that become subjective rather than objective come up, that maybe there's some sort of a post-code adoption sort of review process that happens from time to time. I think that would be a good thing that we could involve the commission with, that could go over high-level stuff like this, and then propose changes and tweaks and review those. I think that'd be a good way to keep this fluid.
Yeah, you never do a major code overhaul without having that kind of iterative process, because I think, we try to capture everything as best we can, and we know that it's not perfect, so I would anticipate that, you know, as things come across our desk and we realize, oh, we didn't think of that particular aspect, we'd bring things forward to you, like, you know, a list of minor amendments and that sort of thing that we need to adjust over time. So I would anticipate that, like you say, there might be things that come up that aren't quite working the way we anticipated, and then we'll have to recognize, though, I think the commission then has to recognize that we do have to be kind of nimble and be able to address the concerns when they come up and make code amendments. I think we're not used to doing code amendments that often, so I think with a new code, that might be something that comes up to the commission more often, and we'll just have to be a little bit more nimble about bringing those things forward then for consideration.
Any other discussion on this specific item? Opinions?
Did we reach a conclusion?
I don't think we did. Personally, I would like to see a red flag option that didn't come to the commission necessarily, but that gave the review committee options. But I guess I would personally like to see what that looks like. I agree with Kyle in many ways, but I think we maybe can have cake and eat it too if we use it, some discretion with it.
So do I have a sense of kind of need to know if we need to bring something additional back for you to consider, or whether we have a majority that would like to continue the way it is? I'd kind of like to be able to go back to the consultants and have another discussion if we need to provide something more.
Do we need a motion?
I don't think you need a motion. I would like to just have some direction, how the majority feels about this, if you want some additional information that Brad has asked for, or whether we leave it as is. And
yeah, I'm one voice here, so maybe the loudest one, but maybe we could go by each member if they think we should move forward with the way it is, or if you have more questions.
I'd like to dive into it a little bit more, and just even if it's just a matter of strengthening your position on going one way or the other, but I just, you know, that's an area where I could see all of a sudden, you know, a lot of need for code amendment, you know, right away, because as soon as the first ones actually start coming in, as things start happening, that's when you realize, oh, you know. So I think it merits a little bit more, a little closer look and a little more discussion on the pros and cons.
okay. Any
others?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. I do agree that design guidance is very difficult. As an artist myself, I realize that whatever is in my mind might not be what's in your mind. And so there's many different ways to look at designs. And this is ever changing. And so if there's some guidelines that can be given, or anything that might help with design, I would appreciate that. The other thing is, I can guarantee you that you walk into a swimming pool, you dip your toes in the shallow end, and you don't know what's in the deep end. So we still have a lot of things coming up in front of us all the time. And so the zonings are going to have to change continuously. And I honestly feel that with the progress of this city, that there are going to be a lot of amendments that will have to continue. So I'd like a little more clarification about what is maintained in here, you know? I guess that's what I would like.
I'm not sure I quite understand. So you'd like clarification? Say that again, Dale.
I would like a little more clarification on design. And I know it's sort of a abstract thing, but I also feel that there are certain things that can be done with design, and I think it should be spelled out. But I'd also believe it should be open-ended also.
Well, I think there's 100 pages or whatever it is that are spelling that out, and I think if we have a panic button that anybody can push at any time, it's undermining the whole idea of this form-based approach. So if there are problems or scenarios that we're worried about where somebody could have done something really wrong, we've had a lot of time to review all the specifics of how that could unfold, and nobody's been able to come up with one. So I think we're at a point where we really need to let this play out and trust all the hard work that's been put into this, and hope that the worst thing that happens of it is a bunch of little tweaks that get suggested. I don't see how anything could go
What you're
that
saying,
wrong.
Kyle, is just let it go as it is, and then if we have to make amendments, we can always do that, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
I agree with that as well.
I agree.
I agree.
I do too.
I agree.
All right, let's move forward then. Thank you, Karen. Good discussion. Item 9.
Okay, this is the request that Mr. Benda brought up, and this was also suggested by Kevin Harberts. He wrote a letter to the commission. I believe we forwarded that to you, to change the regulating plan so that the general urban frontage designation goes all the way from First Street to Second Street frontage, due to the issues about their concerns about allowing commercial to extend all the way through that block from First to Second. So here's some pros and cons from the consultants and the idea of the ways that the form-based code is supposed to work. As I said, the regulating plan is already set up to provide more lot depth for urban general along First Street to accommodate the larger footprint of many commercial buildings, leaving that shallower space along Second Street to keep that smaller footprint for residential types such as row houses. The pro to doing something like this is that uniform building form standards for the entire parcel with considerably more buildable area. So it would provide more buildable area for commercial, but there's quite a few cons from our perspective and the consultant's perspective. This would basically undermine the scale transition from the higher intensity mixed-use area along First Street down to the less intense Overman Park neighborhood to the south. And as I stated, the code does provide considerable flexibility for those parcels with more than one frontage to shift that frontage designation. And we just noticed the importance for the buildings along both Second Street to relate to one another across the street. I think the McDonald's is kind of instructive in that way. It's probably pretty intrusive to have that across the street if you're living in the house across the street from the McDonald's. So I think it's a way to create a better transition into the neighborhood areas and still allow most of that area to be commercial development.
All right, any comments on this item?
Well, when we saw the map, it only goes up to what street anyway? To College, it goes all the way to College?
So the study area just took in the areas that were zoned currently now, commercial or R3 or R4. So yeah, it doesn't go that far up the street. That's part of the study area. Anything beyond that is currently zoned R1 or R2.
Right.
So they're residential already, low-scale residential.
I like the concept, but I also understand that if you're gonna really have commercial on that part of First Street, that's not much depth to be able to have something different on the Second Street side and on the First Street side. So, I'm not sure, how effective that commercial is then. I don't struggle a little bit with that, but because I like the idea of the transition. The whole thought process behind that, I'm just not sure. I'm not sure if it really works, though.
So one thing I would note, we had a similar, the Community Bank and Trust site, they set aside that southern portion so it could accommodate some row houses there that would front on the park. So that's an example of a commercial use that had more land there than they needed for their business, and then can sell off the rest of their property for something that's consistent with the vision plan. And I think the other thing to point out is that we did show that in the vision plan. I think that was a pretty important element to show how those areas transition into the neighborhood. So, the consultants took a pretty hard look, and they could comment next time if you want some more comments on that. But look pretty hard at testing those sites out, and there's an awful lot of commercial development in downtown that are in very small spots, you know, frontages that are only 20 feet, 25 feet wide, and, you know, so I think, they don't go the depth of the lot. If you think about some of the Main Street buildings, so I think, I guess we feel pretty strongly that we need to keep consistent with the vision plan that was adopted.
I agree.
I agree.
We have general consensus about that. This is the issue about the vinyl siding, and I know there was quite a bit of discussion about this. It is a popular wall material. There was a concern expressed by a number of people and several members of the commission about excluding vinyl siding as an allowed building, and listing it as a prohibited building type. I just want to note that the concern about prohibiting vinyl siding in the neighborhood frontage, the concern was that it would be cost prohibitive to have them use other types of siding or to repair the siding and paint it, and might encourage disinvestment in their existing residential properties. Now, the intent of the proposed code was not, I know several people mentioned that it was about aesthetics, and it's not about aesthetics. It's about the durability and the environmental sustainability of the building materials. So the pro to this, to keeping vinyl as an allowed material, is to reduce the upfront cost of building construction and maintenance. That's upfront cost. However, the con is that the higher long-term costs for maintenance and upkeep. There's concerns related to durability and fire resistance, the environmental impacts of PVC. It produces toxic smoke when it burns, and it melts at a fairly low temperature. So if your neighbor's house catches on fire and you have vinyl siding, your vinyl siding, if you're within 160 feet, is going to melt. So I think there's concerns about the environmental sustainability of using this building material. And if it ends up in the landfill, of course, it's not biodegradable. While it is possible to recycle it, there are often issues with contamination from the materials, so often can't be then recycled or not easily recycled. So a lot of recyclers won't take it. And then the lifespan of vinyl is about 15 to 20 years before it becomes pretty brittle from the ultraviolet light, and then can be easily damaged after that. Whereas the wood siding that's on a lot of the homes has lasted for 100 years, and if repaired and painted properly, it can last another quite a few years. So I think there's a lot of other materials out too there with the cement board siding too. That's another option that's a lot more durable and maybe not some of the environmental concerns that vinyl siding has. So we've identified here some options for the commission, because we know this is, like I said, it's a very popular building material, but we just wanted to give some food for thought as we're talking about the resilience plan and environmental issues. We wanted to bring that up as well. So one option is just to maintain it as a prohibited in the code for new construction. 2, to permit the use of vinyl siding to replace or repair existing vinyl siding. So if somebody already has vinyl siding, just to replace with like. Number 3, to permit use of vinyl siding that meets higher minimum standards for quality, maintenance, and durability based on current industry standards to replace or cover over other types of siding on existing single-family dwellings. And number 4, to delete the prohibition on vinyl siding from the code altogether so that it would be allowed in all existing and new buildings in the neighborhood frontages. So our recommendation, we're particularly concerned, as I said, about the long-term consequences of allowing vinyl siding related to the noted environmental concerns. So would recommend prohibiting vinyl siding from new construction, With regard to the second bullet point, the current draft already allows replacement of like with like, and we would just then maybe clarify that in that administrative section where we talk about if people are repairing their buildings. We can certainly make it more clear that they could do that. And then, but we would note that we're not supportive of allowing vinyl siding to replace existing environmentally sustainable building materials such as wood, stone, or brick. We feel that the long-term costs outweigh the short-term savings. So consultant and staff strongly recommend against listing vinyl siding as a generally allowed building material. So would not recommend number 4. So with that, I'm sure there's probably some discussion about this.
Karen, I originally brought that up. One of the things, I agree with you. Any new construction, of course, should not have vinyl siding. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And as long as you put additional language in to make sure it's clear that if you already have vinyl siding and you want to repair it or replace it with like materials, I'm fine with that. But I do agree with the commission that we do not allow it on any new construction. I wholeheartedly agree with that. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm all for not allowing the vinyl except for replacement of existing. There's plenty of other options, and the dollar and cents difference is not that terrific. You know, on the vinyl, just, you know, you got a lot of historic type structures in this area, and the vinyl, frankly, is not a very good application. You know, on those, it tends to lose their character when the vinyl gets used. So I think I don't think it's that big of a burden that it can't be maintained as you got it written now.
I guess my only direction would be to ask the consultants and staff to make sure that it's clear that if you're replacing existing, that you can use it again. But otherwise, for all new buildings.
Don't take that right away from somebody you already have.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, yeah.
I mean, I think the desire to keep vinyl siding in there is just to support the single-family home owners that are in the district that are not a commercial or retail business. And we don't want to restrict them. I mean, it is the #1 used siding material in residential housing, probably. So, yeah, we just need to have the language in there that, now, you say that you can fix vinyl siding. If you have an already residential property that doesn't have vinyl siding, will you be allowed to side it that way?
No.
I mean, should we allow that when it's residential only?
Yes.
Versus a mixed-use or commercial retail building?
I would say yes. Just because thinking of, I had this issue when I moved to town because it was the middle of winter and we had chipped paint. And so in order to move into our house, we had to side it in some material. And no, it wasn't in the downtown, but if other districts in the city of Cedar Falls do not have a vinyl siding rule, then why have one district have a rule that another doesn't?
I agree with that. And the notion that the better materials than vinyl siding aren't that big of a financial imposition is fine if you're talking about a commercial building or $500,000 house. But even in new construction, it's not that common of a used material because it can add, you know, $10,000 to $15,000 or more to the cost of construction. So if we're talking about in these neighborhood districts here, we're not talking about $400,000 houses for the most part. So imposing a $10,000 burden, which could be as much as a 5 to 10% imposition on the value of the house, I think very much is a disinvestment opportunity. So my feelings are with number 4. What I like about number 4 is that it's just talking about the neighborhood frontages. So that's just the 2 blue areas. Obviously, the downtown and the urban general areas would be held to a higher standard, which I think makes absolute sense. And perhaps this could be revisited down the road as development and reconstruction and investment continues years down the road, and not in a climate where building materials are as costly as they are. So my feelings are with item number 4 for now, not that couldn't be changed in the future.
We don't have consensus yet, it looks like. Can we just go down the line?
Number 4, because it's just maintaining the neighborhood frontages, that's fine.
Yeah, 'cause isn't that the objective, is to protect the single-family homes in that district so that they have the right to use it, but we don't want it used entirely through any of the other character districts? I mean, so it just needs to have language to support the.
So just to
single-family
clarify, so in the neighborhood frontages, obviously this is a developed area of town, so there's not a lot of infill development here. And if you've got a single-family house, you're probably not tearing it down to build a new single-family house. I mean, unless it burns down, I guess, or gets destroyed in some way. So what we're really talking about is that somebody is planning to do something multifamily or townhouses or something different with the property. So a development opportunity where you would redevelop the properties for, you know, higher density type uses. So then the question is, so number one is prohibiting it for new construction. Number two is then to allow it to be, if you have it existing on your house, to be replaced. Number three then is allowing it to be, to replace existing materials with vinyl siding. So that would be the one where somebody has a house, as Abby spoke of, and they want to change it from like wood siding and cover it with vinyl siding. So I think when we're talking about new construction, we're really mostly going to be talking about, you know, somebody building a new multifamily building or row houses, duplexes, that sort of thing in those neighborhood frontages. So the question is, do we hold them to a higher standard and require cement board or some material that's more durable and more environmentally sustainable for new construction?
Yeah, for that reason, Karen, I guess I would support 1 and 2.
I'm not opposed to number 1. I am opposed to number 2.
I could support number 2 if it included, if you could, you know, after this zoning passes, if I own a house down there and want a vinyl siding, I would think I should have the right to do that if my next door neighbor who already has it is grandfathered in, when it's a single family residence.
So that's number 3, right?
Number 1.
Well, I was saying number 2, because I was talking about number 2 because it said to replace or repair. It doesn't state.
Oh, number 2 is if you've already got vinyl siding and it's damaged or something and you want to just replace like with like. So that one we would just clarify in the code that you could replace like with like. Number 3 is if you don't currently have vinyl siding and have some, you know, a brick or a wood house, should you be allowed to cover that material with vinyl, is the question.
I honestly don't see how there's much question about this, in my opinion. 4 makes all the sense in the world to me if we're just talking about the neighborhood areas, considering the properties as they are today. Like I said, that could change 5 or 10 years down the road as development spreads beyond the downtown core. But for right now, I think 4 makes sense, all the sense in the world. As far as reaching consensus goes, I don't have any objections to number 1 where vinyl would not be allowed on brand new construction. But I would want some clarity on that being brand new construction from bare dirt, and that it wouldn't be something where substantial improvement could trigger requiring a siding change. If somebody wanted to add a family room out the back or do a major renovation, I don't think that they should be subjected to a $10,000 or $15,000 architectural tax in a neighborhood. It's almost unlike the houses of their neighborhood. I think a restriction like this makes sense, but maybe years down the road. I think right now it's presumptuous.
What I'm hearing is we're all in agreement on number 1. Is there objection to that?
Well, I guess I kind of had a question hidden in there. Is new construction literally means new construction, so that wouldn't also be, new construction wouldn't be implied by substantial improvement.
So in other words, in that trigger chart that we had in the administrative section, to make it clear that somebody that already had vinyl siding on their vinyl sided house and they wanted to build an addition, that they could continue with the same material, basically.
Yes.
So we certainly could
Yeah.
do something like that, clarify that.
So number one?
Does that sound like everybody's in nods of heads?
Nods?
Nods?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we'll provide some additional clarity in that trigger chart. And then I assume we have consensus on number 2, changing like with like, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That sounded like we had consensus on that. And then I don't know if we have consensus on number 3. So the idea is that you have an existing house that's got brick or wood. Would we allow you to cover that up with vinyl?
Say that again?
So if you have an existing house that currently has wood or brick, or, existing, would you allow that to be covered up with change to vinyl?
No.
That's for,
I thought these were options. So one just says that you can't use vinyl siding on new construction.
Right, so I'm saying we have consensus that yes, we want to go forward with that. And yes, we have a consensus on number 2. And so we can do multiple of these. In other words, we can make sure that that's clear that you can replace vinyl with vinyl. So then the question is, number 3, do we go that next step, allowing somebody to replace existing siding, wood siding or brick siding, and cover it with vinyl?
If it's an existing house and not new construction, you'd automatically be able to use vinyl if we're going with number 1, if I'm reading that right.
No, we're not talking about new construction here. We're talking about an existing house, existing building that already has siding on it, obviously, and somebody wants to change the type of siding and put vinyl over the top of.
Okay, I understood it like Kyle did, that it was new. I'm thinking like someone's buying the lot on Main Street and they're gonna build a new house on it, that then you don't want vinyl siding on that.
Yeah, that's number 1.
Okay.
Okay, so we're
No,
back.
number 3 is if there's a brick building, somebody's
Yeah.
not going to put vinyl over.
I'm for number 3 just because I had the experience of having to do something with it. And yes, I could have bought cement board, but it would have, at the time, wouldn't have been an option, but I'm one opinion.
You basically had wood structure that you covered with vinyl,
Yes.
which I think in a lot of cases in the older districts, sections of town, you have a lot of wood structures that a lot of people would like to cover with vinyl, and they put up insulboard before they put up the vinyl.
I think 1 by itself is adequate. If it's brand new construction, higher standard. If it's any sort of reuse of existing structure, doesn't matter what it has on it now. If it has vinyl on it, obviously it could be replaced with vinyl. If it has checkered wood or asbestos or whatever, that could get replaced or covered with vinyl because it's a betterment and it's equitable for a lot of the types of houses in these areas right now. I don't think we can restrict it beyond that.
We don't want vinyl siding on downtown buildings, though, correct? I mean,
Well, that's not allowed at all, is it?
No, this is in the neighborhood
okay,
frontages.
just the
Yeah.
neighborhoods, okay. I like 1, 2, and 3, as long as 3 would include someone who doesn't already have existing vinyl. If they want to use vinyl, they should be allowed to.
It sounds like we have a difference we have a consensus on 1 and 2, and we have a difference of opinion on number 3, how far we should go for existing buildings.
Well, what we haven't addressed is, people that have wood houses that want to put vinyl on them.
Right, that's number 3.
that's number 3.
That's number 3, yep.
Yeah.
And I would not be in favor. I don't think vinyl siding should be used. So I would agree with the consultants and the staff on number 3, that any way we can limit the use of something so environmentally unsustainable, we should.
So
So as I reread this, I think 3 is stated correctly. So I would support 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, I just reread it too. I'm with you, Dave.
We don't read very well.
So we've been arguing with ourselves.
Yeah, I was wondering what was going on.
I think we now have consensus.
Okay, so now with number 3. So number 3,
Don't ask again, Karen.
I'm sorry, the number
Don't ask
3
me to
is,
reread
should
this.
you be allowed to replace existing wood siding with vinyl?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm for 1 and 2, not 3 and 4.
Right, so that's why I don't
I'm
think
with
we still
Marty.
have consensus. So we heard from Leslie, she doesn't support number 3. Brad, no support for number 3, right? I'm trying to count, and Marty, I've heard, Dave, I heard that he is supportive of 3. I don't know where Amanda stands. Not supportive of 3. I've heard Dale talk both ways, so I'm not sure where you're landing on that one.
I would like number 3 because I know there's a lot of properties in this neighborhood area that are wood siding that people would like to put vinyl on and don't want to put cement board on it.
So the other option is to repair the wood siding, of course. I mean,
Correct.
that's
Repaint.
repair and paint it, right?
And in some cases, that's almost as expensive as vinyl siding.
Right, but it's probably more sustainable to, it lasts a lot longer than probably the vinyl siding if you do it.
No, paint doesn't.
Well, I guess there's probably a difference of opinion about how long the vinyl siding lasts before it becomes brittle, and I don't know if we got a couple architects here. I don't know what the thoughts on the longevity of vinyl.
Personally, I'm a little torn by this one because I don't like the vinyl solution. The vinyl solutions have gotten better. I have a wood house that I've painted 3 times since I've owned it, and it's not sustainable long term, I have to say. So I'm on the fence. I could go both ways on that one, I guess.
Well, I've seen some new construction that was not necessarily factory pre-finished, but it was site finished, site painted, hardy or smart siding, similar product. And if you don't use the right paint on it, it can fade and look really unsavory within 2, 3, 4 years. So with that, I can't say that I haven't seen a number of projects. I don't know about an equal number, but a number of projects that were premium material, quote unquote, that looked horrible after a few years. And some vinyl projects, because they were tastefully done and they used good quality product, look great after 10 or 15 years. And I don't think the longevity of either is really much beyond 15 to 20 years, even if it physically holds up aesthetically. I mean, either one of them are going to be aesthetically obsolete within 15 to 20 years. That's been my observations. The vinyl siding can last 30 and 40 years and up, but it looks bad, and so does a painted surface, and we're beyond the maintenance-free warranty of a painted premium product. If we were in like a little condo project on a golf course deciding body for restrictive covenants, I think it'd be very appropriate to put a $10,000 or $15,000 imposition on each one of the dwelling units. But I don't think these neighborhood districts downtown, maybe some pockets here or there, I just don't think that they're there yet. And if we give it a little bit of time and ease everyone into this, allow people to fix and improve and have the freedoms that they have when they bought their house, if development really takes off and we see a lot of revitalization spreading from that downtown core, I think revisiting this down the road makes sense. But for right now, I just don't see how we even have a choice or why it's even a debate to impose a massive betterment on regular homeowners.
Could we use number 1 and 4, and then on number 4, delete new building? If you take new building out of there, then you're just allowing vinyl anywhere. And, but if you take the new building out, you're already covering it with number 1.
Well, we'll draft the code amendment. These are just laying out the options here.
Okay.
So we'll actually draft a code amendment to put in here, so we don't need to wordsmith it here. Number 4 is basically, so a different option altogether. So we're covering the new construction with number 1, so, and, you know, so we're just trying to get a level of how far you want to go. And so you can do multiple of these, right? So
I would go with 1, 2, and 3.
So I hear.
We do an informal poll.
Yeah.
All those in favor of
Number 3. Let's
of number 3, raise your hand.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And no from Leslie.
Okay, so we've got, okay. So it sounds like we've got consensus on number 3. All right. And then number 4, this would be going all the way and just allowing it in general on new construction and everything.
I guess I don't favor that.
Okay.
I think new
so-
construction should be held to that higher standard.
Okay,
Agreed.
all right.
Anyone opposed to that? All right. Let's
Okay,
move on.
that was easier, that one. Okay. All right.
Don't ask us again, Karen.
Okay. Okay, very good, thank you. Okay, so moving on. This is another one, is a building material question. When we had a work session with some architects and developers, was brought up by Jesse Leiser from Emergent Architects. He had questioned our prohibition on foam-based products and mentioned that the Fibon is a often used material for reconstructing like cornices, historic elements of the buildings, and we agreed that that wasn't intended and not to prevent something like that. So the consultants said basically what we could do is say durable foam-based products such as Fibon may be used for architectural detailing in the code. And then we just clarify the language in the code to make it clear that what we were really talking about when I asked Mary and Jeff about why, because I don't really know that much about the foam-based products, but they said there are some styrofoam type products that are really not good materials that basically you bump them and they are damaged pretty easily. So that's what they were trying to prohibit. So I guess we were in support of this amendment.
I agree.
And then this next one is provide a little bit more in the code about accessory dwelling units. This is something new in the community, and I think it's something that's really going to be positive. It provides some additional income, I think, for single-family homeowners to provide a little additional income for an accessory dwelling unit, but we do want to make it clear that it is really intended only for owner-occupied properties, and that there's no right then to, as we know, things change over time, so then all of a sudden somebody is marketing it as a duplex, and it really does change then what can be the number of people that can be occupying it. And so we don't want to have any uncertainty in the code. So we would suggest that we put something in the code that's clear that they have to record some sort of an agreement, some sort of an affidavit that acknowledges that, basically, that it's because it's owner occupied. And so we're in support of adding a little additional language there to clarify that. Everybody okay with that?
Good.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is the last one on our matrix right now. This is prohibit conversion of existing single-family unit dwellings into duplex or multi-unit dwellings. The new code does open up the possibility for new types of housing, but in a manner that ensures that they fit into the context of the neighborhood. With all the design standards and the quality materials that we're talking about here, in a way that fits into the neighborhood. However, one thing that we're a little bit concerned about is the new standards and allowance are not intended to encourage existing single-family houses to be broken up, chopped up into apartments, to add additional units in a manner that sort of reduces that functionality and livability of the dwelling. And, you know, this is something that's probably more experienced in college towns like Cedar Falls. Probably a lot of places you don't have this kind of thing. I think a number of years ago when the Neighborhood Stabilization Code amendments went through, probably a number of you remember this, there was the same prohibition put in the R1 and R2 districts. Try to kind of stop that practice and keep some of those single-family homes then available that are nice, affordable options for people, for both rental and owner-occupied. And but the code will then allow new duplexes and new row houses to be built, but then they can be built from scratch in a way that kind of fits in to the neighborhood. One of the concerns is if you chop up a single-family house into small apartments, based on the market at the time, enrollment goes down at UNI, and all of a sudden you've got a structure that's really hard to convert back. And it takes a lot of money for somebody to buy that and then try to restore the existing house. So that is the reason that we would suggest keeping a prohibition on that, ability to do that, so.
Exceptions might be rare, but if it were existing or part of an existing building that were being substantially improved by those definitions, would that then be acceptable if it were held to the new design standards?
So this would just prevent you from creating new units. So obviously you can improve any existing building that's there now. This doesn't prevent any kind of improvements to existing buildings. It just would prevent somebody from taking a single-family house and make it into a triplex, for example.
But if they built new, if it met the standards, they would be able to do that potentially.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you build a new triplex and met all the standards, obviously that's not a conversion.
I guess where I'm going with this is there was a lot of talk about being green and sustainable and that kind of thing. If it were thought out thoroughly, I would hate to have some technical restriction that didn't allow some partial reuse of what might be there if it met the new standards. So I guess what I'm asking is if there's just maybe just a little bit of tweaking to the language there, if that makes sense. Maybe our architect friends have some thoughts beyond that.
I mean, if you're doing like a 75% rebuild and it's not substantially different than the existing structure when you're all done.
Well, say if part of the structure were reusable or part of the foundation,
Right.
or if the foundation were reusable or whatever that be.
I think you'd have the ability to consider that then a new project, even if you're reusing part of what's there. If it's like over 50%.
That's what I'm asking. It very well may work that way. I just want to make sure that it can.
So you're talking about if they tear down the building and they keep the foundation or something and build on top of it? Or?
Yeah, if it's not completely 100% from scratch, bare ground.
They leave the main structure and add on to it and totally redo the exterior.
I would think that would be considered new construction, but probably at that point, if you're going to create multiple units, you probably end up, but yeah, I mean, if you're just going to
I guess this one seems to make sense to me because I like the fact that it's consistent then with everything else in the city, you know, so the less variations we have, the better type of thing. I don't know.
Okay.
So
All right. Thank you, Karen.
Okay.
Any
All right.
commission updates?
I have no updates, so next time, other than, next time we'll have another hearing. If, I didn't know if tonight we would hear anybody suggest any new amendments that we haven't heard so far, and we would just add them to the matrix, but I think we'll provide one more opportunity for people to bring something forward if they want to, or, and then what our next steps with this would be to then actually draft and incorporate what you've decided here into the draft, that then would be forwarded on to council then.
So what you're saying is we still have time to really dig through and see if we want to bring any other items forward.
Right, so if there's anything else that you see that you think, oh my gosh, I missed that, I think we should change that, that, you know, the public hearing is still open.
Okay.
Or if anybody from the public, you know, wants to come next time if there's some additional changes, but otherwise, we would just go forward with what we've been suggested here and then move it on to council if you're comfortable with that.
Well, public comment is really important for something like this, so.
Yeah.
Is your intent that we might leave this open for a couple more meetings, or?
We had it on our draft schedule to have it, so this will be the third, so we had the introduction last time, and of course, it's been out for public review for a month and a half. So our intent with the schedule was that next time would be the last public hearing. But it is totally up to the commission if you still think there's unanswered questions or if something's brought up next time to continue it to one more hearing. That's certainly within your discretion to do that. So we had tried to lay out kind of a schedule to see how it would go, but, you know, it was just a draft schedule, so.
Karen, what have we done to reach out to people, you know, after this? I know we've done a lot kind of building up to the process, notifying people that, you know, this is going to happen in some way. I know a few people who watch this meeting for fun, but not very many. So.
What did you think?
So yeah, all the property owners, we sent out notices like we usually would with a rezoning. So that is the other step that we have to take once we have a draft of the code. Of course, then we have to rezone the property to the new designation. So that's the other piece of this, is to actually rezone the properties. So we can discuss that in more detail next time, and that's about adopting the regulating plan as the new zoning map. We did send out fairly detailed letters, and we did get a number of people calling in to ask for clarification about those letters. So we tried to help people answer their questions. So all property owners that currently own property in the area, plus within 200 feet of that boundary, all those property owners were notified, and we did some certified letters as well, just to make sure that we knew that those were getting to the people that needed to get them. Other than that, Amanda, our communications specialist, has been working very hard to get notices out and press releases out. In fact, another one went out today, one went out last week, and maybe Stephanie had some.
A variety
insight.
of press releases have gone out, but then also during the informal workshops you were holding and public review draft, a postcard went to all residents in the area. So we wanted them to know, hey, now's the informal time, take a look at it. And then we moved into a formal notice of, hey, it's being considered at a public hearing, and, you know, it's starting to move forward.
Great, thank you. Just want to make sure everyone knew that.
So in summary, how much time do people have left to chime in? And secondly, what's the goal realistically for final implementation?
Well, once you give a recommendation to the council, of course, we could go through the same process. Typically, we go through a committee of the whole meeting and present your recommended draft to them at a meeting. And I'm assuming that the council, it's really up to them, but I'm assuming the council, we had sort of tentatively planned some work sessions with the council as well, similar to what you had, so to make sure that everybody could understand it and ask questions. And then it would go through public hearings at the council as well. And of course, with any zoning change, text amendment, it takes 3 readings at council to get adopted. So there's still plenty of time for people to come forward through this hearing process, both at P&Z and council, to weigh in on the code.
All right, any other questions? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.